Welcome to episode 4 of my podcast. This is a normal length episode, and the text in the description is also a normal length. The first 3 episodes were longer, and in general, these should be around 20 minutes, so there's really no reason for it to be a whole thing. I beg your pardon. I didn't mean to burp. But it happens every video, no matter what I do. Anyway, this one is just notes. It's not a paragraph, it's just notes. And as usual, you can follow along in the description if you want, but don't expect anything great. This topic isn't as big as the other two. This is just about, it's big, but it's not as big. This is just about death. And I touched on it a little bit last week. The world without you will go on, but that doesn't make you unimportant. Life goes on no matter what, because everything matters, and everything is constantly changing. Nothing lasts forever, but nothing is ever really gone. Are you more afraid of dying, or of living to watch others die? These are just a series of statements and questions, basically, but that's what this was originally supposed to be, notes to remind me of what I want to address. So let's start with, the world without you will go on, but that doesn't make you unimportant. What that means is, you're not really the reason that the world is surviving. I think a lot of people, even though it's common sense, don't really live as if that's the truth. People get very self-important and forget that not everything has to always go their way, and that the world isn't depending on them to go on. And that doesn't mean that you don't matter. That doesn't mean that you could kill yourself and no one would miss you. It just means that you don't have to pressure yourself all the time to feel like you have to live life perfectly and you have to do everything right. So, in that sense, you don't need to be afraid of dying. But that's the last thing that I wrote, and I might jump around. I don't know if I'm going to do this in order. Are you more afraid of dying or of living to watch others die? I think we're usually afraid of both. A lot of people don't talk about death. That's the whole purpose of this show, is to talk about things people don't usually talk about. But another reason people don't talk about death is because it's connected to religion. Because there's that question, what happens when you die? Is it the end? The two possibilities are basically that your body is sort of creating an illusion of consciousness and existence, and in reality, your consciousness is just a result of physical things inside of your brain and your body that are almost like a really detailed and complex robot. And when that robot stops functioning, then it's no longer to create the illusion of consciousness. So if you believe that, then you believe that we don't really even exist, and that everything is just kind of an illusion, and that when we die, when our bodies die, that's it, there's nothing else, because we were never real to begin with. So if your body stops functioning, then you're your body, so there's nothing else afterwards. And then there's the people who believe that you're different from your body, that consciousness isn't just a result of physical things going on in your brain, but that your body is more like a vessel for your consciousness, and it works together to create an experience for you, and kind of like a simulation. And when your body dies, your consciousness is still around, and it can go to heaven or hell or reincarnate or hang around as a ghost or all of these things. I mean, there's so many different beliefs. Some people believe all of it, some people believe just a little bit of it, and some people apply a whole other set of rules and morals and philosophy to it. But what I find interesting is that people who talk so much about right and wrong, like even in the criminal justice system, there's videos of people saying like, "Oh, this man did something wrong, and doesn't he feel bad that he did this wrong thing?" And I'm thinking like, how are you in a position to talk about what's right and wrong when I guarantee you've never even scratched the surface of moral philosophy, which is a complex subject, and you're just going to arrogantly act like right and wrong is suddenly objective? Yeah, that'd be nice if we figured that out and we all came to an agreement on what's right and wrong, but unfortunately, we're not there yet. And I wish we would stop pretending that we are, because it's just turning into like a dictatorship and people telling you what to do and what not to do, and you just believing it and going along with it without actually stopping and saying, wait a minute, is this even wrong? Or is it just against their interest? So then you get the conspiracy theorists, though. This whole other horde of people comes in, and they're going to tell you about how everything is against them. These people have a very self centered mentality. Again, that same issue of like, are you really thinking about the problem? Oh no. Okay, I think somebody's just going to the bathroom. Um, okay. Anyway, um, I do this live. I mean, not technically, but I want it to feel like a live stream, so I can't edit noises out or distractions. Anyway, um, yeah. So these people are focused on themselves, and they're focused on how does this affect me and how can I gain from this. It's not really based in logic or an interest in truth, even though a lot of them call themselves truthers. You can't really put too much stock into a lot of the conspiracies floating around, but it's important to know that in everything, in religion, in theories, in science, in conspiracies, all of it, there's bits of truth. You can't just say it's either all true or it's none of it is true. Like, you have to just kind of step back and look at it and say, what of this actually makes sense? And a more important question, what could I actually do about it? And I find myself coming to the conclusion that a lot of these conspiracy theories are kind of irrelevant. Like, it doesn't, like, flat Earth, for example. What difference does it make in my life if the Earth is flat? Then it just, when you think about it that way, you just realize that it's not even an argument worth having, because it makes no difference. There's no point in talking about it. But death is worth talking about, because everybody's going to die, and it's important to get everybody on the same page about this. Granted, I personally think it's idiotic that there's a whole subsection of people who think that the Earth is not a sphere. You can literally see the moon with your own two eyes. You're not looking through a screen. It's not a simulation. It's not a lie. You can sometimes, even on special occasions, see other planets. You can look through a telescope. Why do you think that there are round planets, but that this planet is not round? Please explain that to me, because I don't follow your logic. But these people exist, and they're not kidding. They're very passionate, and they will present a ton of evidence, which is a separate video. I might do a video on like how to hear from people who disagree with you, because a lot of people get very defensive, and there are way better ways to deal with it. Instead of hearing somebody say something controversial and you be like, oh, you believe that, and then you think a different way about them, just be like, I mean, empathetic, not necessarily respect, because you can't technically respect someone who doesn't respect themselves, but you can have empathy for their situation, and you cannot be rude to them. You can be honest and direct, and you can set boundaries while still being kind and treating them in a kind way. But this has nothing to do with death. I'm going off on a tangent. I have a tendency to do that. I apologize. But yeah, so life goes on no matter what, because everything matters and everything is constantly changing. It's true. There's this quote I like that says, "No man ever steps in the same river twice, because he's not the same man and it's not the same river." And it's true. Like, the river is constantly flowing. You're constantly evolving. You're not the same person you were half a second ago, and the world around you, even if it seems still. Like the background, that picture's not moving, but it's not still either. And nothing is still. Everything is constantly in motion relative to something else, because the universe never looks exactly the same for any amount of time. It's constantly changing, and everything in it is changing. And you have to accept that change is an inevitable part of life, and part of that change includes death. The proof that people are only afraid of death because it's about change is that technically people die every second. Somebody just died, somebody else just died, someone just died, probably of old age, but you don't know. I'm sure somebody just died in a car accident yesterday and you didn't care because you didn't hear about it, or you heard about it but you didn't know the person. The closer you get to it, the more it bothers you. If it's someone who maybe you see once a year, it's gonna hurt, but it's not gonna really hurt. If it's someone who you had a close relationship with, but you only saw them once every 5 years, it'll be about the same. It'll hurt, but it's not going to really follow you around for a super long time and set you up to grieve or anything. But if it was someone who you talked to frequently, even if you didn't see them, if it was someone who played some type of important role in your everyday life, and then they die, and you didn't see it coming, it wasn't like a gradual, slow thing where you had a year to realize that it was going to happen and plan around it. If one day, like I had a situation recently, where I started working at Rite Aid, and the person who trained me, she spent 3 weeks teaching me everything I know about working there, and then 2 or 3 days after I saw her, she just had a heart attack and died, just suddenly. And I didn't find out until a day or two after it happened, and it went from maybe this person isn't feeling well, I hope they're feeling well, because I was just starting to get to know them and get used to the idea that I was going to be seeing them very often. And then all of a sudden, I'm told that I'm never going to see them again. It's drastic, but if I never started working there, I wouldn't have cared. If I started working there after it happened, I would have said, wow, that's terrible. I'm so sorry that she died, but I never even met her. Even though it happened yesterday, I never met her. So that's what I mean. Like, if I came in and started working there the day after it happened, if I hadn't met her, it wouldn't have affected me. But I spent 3 weeks getting to know her and learning from her. And that's why it had an impact. Because that's what death really does. It's not about the fact that the person died. It's about the fact that you have to deal with a change in your life. And we are not taught to cope with change. And there's a lot of reasons for that. Most of them political, so I'm not going to get into it right now. But we aren't taught to cope with change. We're taught to hold on to things and be very unhealthily attached. We don't have good boundaries, and we don't understand the power of detachment, which once I started learning about that, I realized how badly I was led astray by just following my peers, because nobody knows what they're doing. Nobody knows what they're doing at all. And when you realize that, it can be scary, but it also is liberating, because it means you don't have to do a lot of the things that you thought you did have to do. And you still have to, rewire your circuits, because your brain gets wired to think a certain way. And you have to realize that a lot of the things that you think you have to do, you don't actually have to do. So even though I said everything matters, in a sense, nothing matters. So it's sort of like the only thing that really matters is truth and making sure your values are in the right order. You're not going to be too concerned about a lot of the things that people are unconsciously worried about, like little things that we get upset about, like if we're in a fight and we say things we don't mean, or if we're just having our daily lives and we're just going about doing things, we're not even that confrontational about any aspect of our lives. We just kind of float around through the day. There's all sorts of ways that people live, and yet throughout it all, they're still not really living for themselves. They're living for some other force, and they don't have to be. If they fully believed that nothing mattered, would they be doing something different? And I think a good way to think about that is, what if the world ended tomorrow? I think I talked about this last week, actually. Like, what if you just found out that everyone was going to die tomorrow? How many things would you suddenly do differently? How many things that you think are important would become unimportant? So that's something to think about. And I just want to talk about what actually happens when you die. I was going to touch on suicide a little bit, but I don't want to. That deserves its own video. So I believe what happens when you die is that you are just consciousness, your energy, and I think that your energy having a human experience. So when your body is no longer working, I think we do this even when we're alive. I think we're not always in our bodies. When we dream, um, we can we can astral travel. We can do all sorts of things where we're not in our bodies. When we're in a coma, we're kind of going back in and out, and lots of people can do this. And it's not like a skill or anything. Nobody's in their body 100% of the time that they're alive. But the closer you get to death, the more you're going to be going in and out. And you're going to be seeing things. This is a common thing in nursing homes. People will always talk about how, and there's no scientific explanation for this. Like, this is just kind of one of those things that people are like, this happens and we don't know why it happens. It's anyone's guess. But people will hear old people in nursing homes talking to people who aren't there. And I even have a personal example of this. My great grandma was talking to her husband, Joe, who had died a few years prior. And the nurses said that she heard her in her room saying something like, "I'm not going with you, Joe," which sounded like something she would say to him. And obviously, the nurse was telling the truth. Obviously, she really did it. I think the question is, was she losing her mind because of her old age and imagining things, or was she actually communicating with someone? And considering how common this is, and considering all the evidence that there is, I think it's a lot more likely that she was actually talking to him. And she died not long after that. So, things like this, people don't usually talk about, people don't think about, and there's a lot of reasons for it. Again, political, but it's just about what's good for the economy. So there's a lot of information that we could actually use to better our lives. And if it's not good for keeping the power in the hands of the already powerful, then they're not going to really allow that to get a lot of attention. They're going to do the best that they can to sweep it under the rug. And there's a lot of really good information out there that can be helpful, that is either going to be extremely tainted by um, like, I don't know what the word is, but like money, I guess. Just like lots of things, like spirituality has been tainted, I think, because a lot of people are aware of it and talk about it, but it's like trendy, and it's people don't take it that seriously. Oh, are you into astrology or blah blah blah? Oh, hey, I got a psychic reading and it was so cool. Like, people don't think of it as a serious thing. So there's all sorts of ways that this kind of thing is buried. And doctors and science, they're not going to really take a serious look at it, even though there's a lot of information there and there's a lot of evidence. But you just have to be aware that you're probably being lied to at every corner. And the thing about mediumship and psychics and everything, a lot of people are already paranoid that they're being lied to. It's a scam, it's a con artist, blah blah blah. But the thing is, that has it ever occurred to you that life is not what you see? There's even science behind how limited our vision is. Like, we can only see a small percentage of colors, and there's a lot going on that our brains can't even process. So there's colors our brains are not even capable of seeing. Just understand how little you actually know, and and don't be afraid of that, because it just means that there are more possibilities, and you have to trust that nothing's ever going to be a dangerous, scary possibility. Like, oh, that's bad, and now I'm afraid because something is bigger and stronger than me. You can relax. You're part of the universe. Nothing's ever going to change that. You're connected to everything. It's not going to get you. It's you. That's like being afraid of yourself. You have to remember that you're okay. If you wouldn't be afraid of yourself, you shouldn't be afraid of anything. So, that's not to say that if you came into a situation where someone was like holding a knife at you, that you shouldn't be afraid. But there's a difference between being afraid and not having any faith. You can be in a situation where someone's holding a knife on you and you are afraid, but you still trust that everything's going to be okay, and you can trust that your instincts and your intuition will tell you how to get out of that situation. And sometimes you just have to trust your instincts because you don't have time to listen to your intuition. Sometimes your instinct just says run, and you just do it. But I think if you practice enough, your intuition can be as quick as your instincts. But there's always going to be a fight or flight situation where you don't have any time to do anything but run. So, fear isn't as black and white as people think. It's not like I'm either afraid or I'm not afraid. There's levels of fear, there's different situations. But when I talk about fear, I'm talking about a lack of faith. I'm talking about the idea that you would be afraid in a universe that you're part of, that somehow it implies something could go wrong, that it's somehow your responsibility to stop something from going wrong. And it implies a sense of self-importance, inflated sense of self-importance. Okay, now who's coming out? Okay, somebody else going to the bathroom, I guess. But I'm gonna wrap this up soon because I've talked about a lot. But I'll just want to finish what I was saying about what happens when you die. Basically, you're no longer part of your body. You kind of go out, and this happens throughout your life at different points. Not often, but it happens. And then when you are fully dead, then there's no going back into your body. So then you can stay on Earth, or you can go into the light, which is sort of letting go of that identity of yourself and just becoming everything, all of your identities, all of your past, all of it just connected, and you're sort of in line with truth when you do that. But that's kind of like heaven and hell, because you can't get into the light if you're holding on to ego, if you're holding on to any fears, because fear is never based in truth. So if you're holding on to anything like that, it's going to keep you out of, it's sort of as simple as this. If you're holding on to lies, it's going to keep you out of truth. So you have to let go of that. You have to sort of let go of what you're holding on to, and it's weighing you down, and then you go up and you can be in the light and continue with your journey in the universe, because it's never going to be over. It's infinite. And I talked about time in my first video, but I think time is going to have to be its own video, because I touch on this in every video because it's just always relevant somehow. But I guess that's just because I'm talking about a lot of philosophical things like death and psychology and all this. But I'm going to be touching on other topics. And I mean, I guess this is okay, because I said that I was going to be making future episodes and talking about how what I talked about in the first 3 episodes applies to the future episodes. So that's kind of what you can expect from now on, so that you don't really have to watch the first 3. But if you're watching all of them, you might be hearing a lot of the same things. And that's okay. If you've already heard it, maybe it helps to hear it again. Maybe it helps to hear it in this context. I don't know. But I'm sorry if I'm boring you. That's really all I can say. Yeah, so nothing lasts forever, but nothing is ever really gone. This is for people who are afraid of losing loved ones and of change in general. It's never really gone. That relationship that ended too soon, that person who died, whatever it was, it's not gone just because it's not continuing to happen. Nothing is ever going to continue to happen forever. Like, even if you find a relationship that lasts until you die, unless you die at the exact same time, one of you is going to have to live without the other. And like, you're just going to have to accept that at some point, that that's okay, that not everything has to be forever, because there is no forever. there's only until I die, but you can't promise that it'll be this person in every incarnation, every lifetime, because time is an illusion. I do believe that people reincarnate, and I do believe that they can communicate with us even after they've reincarnated, because they don't have to be stuck in one place. It's not as physical as we imagine it, unless they're earthbound, which means that they didn't let go of what they were holding on to, and they're not in the light yet. And that's the closest thing you're going to get to hell. The light is like heaven, and staying on earth as a spirit with your ego is the closest thing you can get to hell, because you're dead and you're not going to be able to continue learning the lessons that you can learn while you're alive and having the human experience. But it's basically the same as the human experience, which is torture. The human experience is not meant to be fun or relaxing. It's just a learning journey, and you're supposed to be focused on learning. Nobody said life was going to be easy unless they were high. Like life is life is complicated, and it's filled with trials and challenges, and if you die and you don't go into the light, that's like the dumbest thing you could do. But people do this while they're alive, and it's the same thing. There are tons of people. You see them for 20 years and they don't change at all. They're exactly the same. They haven't learned a thing. They haven't changed at all. But they're still technically growing. They're still evolving. They're just not flowing with it. They're holding on to something that's rotting away, and they're gonna lose it eventually. But they won't let go. And these stagnant people, they can't ever look back at their behavior and reflect and say, did I really want to say that? Could I have done that differently in a way that I'd be more proud of? They never want to look at them because they can't stand the idea that they're not already doing everything right, that they're not already perfect. And that's coming from a place of fear, lack of faith in yourself and the universe. And that's a shame, because you don't have anything to be afraid of. But when you die and you hold on to that, you're really just hurting yourself, because you're stuck on Earth in the same way that you're having the human experience, except this time you're not even able to do anything with it. You're just floating around aimlessly. And this happens a lot, but um, just like in life, you always have the ability to choose truth, to choose to change, and choose to evolve and flow with the universe, because that's all you really can ever do. It's not about changing and going from a bad person to a good person. It's just about going from a stuck person to a moving person who's flowing with the universe and not resisting change. And we have so much. I really want to emphasize this most important point. Do not let anybody shame you into feeling like you have to be a certain way, or you're a bad person or a good person. Don't be afraid of anything that you do. Understand that you are not your thoughts. You're just energy, innocent, neutral energy, having a human experience. And you're not going to be perfect. You're not going to be all light 100% of the time. You have just as much capacity to be light as you have to be dark. And you can't be embarrassed or ashamed of what you do. Just view it neutrally and say, oh, that's interesting that that's what I did. I wonder how I can learn from it. And don't say, I did that, so I'm a bad person. Try to separate yourself from the things that you do, and know that you're not your actions, you're not your thoughts. You're just having an experience. So it helps to separate from it, and it helps you to be more forgiving of yourself, and that also helps you to be better to other people, so that you can be more proud of what you choose to do, more in control of yourself. So that way, when you are, having thoughts and making decisions, it's actually you. And then you don't have to separate from it. You can say, I actually wanted to do that. I meant to do that. And I can say that I'm proud of that. I didn't let go of control and let chaotic energies take over and manipulate me. I wasn't letting fear control me. So that's really the goal, is just to be mindful. And that carries over into death. And if you don't believe in that, if you have different beliefs, I understand that and I respect that. And you can let me know what you think in the comments. I love having discussions about this. So if you disagree with me ever, always just let me know. There's no, this is a totally safe place to talk about it, because I don't judge. I really just like hearing about different perspectives. So that's what I believe about death. And in regards to you dying, that's really all you need to keep in mind. It's just another it's just another part of life. It's nothing to be afraid of. And if you believe that nothing happens when you die, then what are you afraid of anyway? Like, how is that a bad thing? Then you're not even gonna notice. Like, there's not gonna be any of you to notice. So if you're afraid of watching others die or having people in your life leave, you need to learn to be more grateful. That could be a good way to practice being okay with it, is to say, it's not really gone. Like the coworker I mentioned who died, Stephanie, she spent 3 weeks in my life, and that will always exist. It'll never not be true that I spent 3 weeks with her and that I got to know her a little before she died and that she was alive. That's never going to change. And I've had people die in my life. My dog was one of the hardest to grieve because that happened during the pandemic, and it just was so, like, it wasn't a good time. But my dog, Lola, who I had since I was 4 years old, died in the best circumstances possible because she was sick and I knew it was coming for a couple months, and I always had this vision, and I think she tried to show me that this was how she wanted to go, where, like our other dogs were put to sleep when they were sick in a hospital, I, I saw her wanting to hold on. She was very comfortable. She's like, I'm fine. I like being alive. I like being around you guys. I'm not afraid of pain. You don't have to put me out of my misery. You don't have to put me to sleep. I just want to be here. And she was always very clear about that. And the day she died, she waited for all of us. And a lot of people, when they're dying, will do this. They'll wait for everyone to be there because it's their choice. They're ready to let go, and they know how to hold on and let go. And sometimes it isn't your choice, but whenever you're forced to let go, death is peaceful. This is something that you should know, is that death is really just like, even if it's sudden and even if it's painful, your body has a way of, once you know that there's no turning back, like you're gonna die, your body has a way of letting you go through that in a relaxing way. Sort of like how, I don't know, just if you go to like some professional situation where they take care of you and they're like gonna, I don't know, like if you're going for an interview for TV and they're gonna put makeup on you, like they know that it's not an easy experience, but there are forces out there trying to make it as comfortable as possible for you. So you're probably thinking, what the hell are you talking about? How do you even know that? I feel like you know it too. I feel like if you really thought about it, that would resonate with you, and it just feels right. So just trust me on that one. But it's better when you can choose. And I think my dog Lola was ready. She waited until everyone was there, and she was just in the living room on the bed. Everyone was surrounding her. She was home. She was comfortable, and she let go and said goodbye. And I told her it was okay. I didn't say anything out loud, but I looked at her in the eyes and I just said, it's okay. Sometimes people need to hear that. And that's the beauty of letting go, is that you're not saying, please give me more time, which suggests that you're ungrateful for what you already got. It suggests that they didn't do enough. And you really need to be thinking about the other person more. So just be happy for what you had and let them go, and they'll be okay. You'll be okay. And like I said at the beginning, life goes on. The world without you will go on. So just focus on that and know that it's okay to grieve, because what is grieving if not processing some changes that are sudden and hard to process? And just don't be hard on yourself. Know that it's okay to feel whatever you're feeling, but don't get stuck in the grieving process. Don't get so, obsessed with how it should have happened, or if only they were still alive, or it would have been better if, like, let go of all those thoughts. It's pointless. And I know you know that, but I mean, do you really, do you practice it? So yeah, which goes back to the discipline message. Have some self-control. Learn to control your thoughts, and everything will be okay. So yeah, death is just change. Nothing is ever really gone. Be grateful for what you had, and make sure that you're always ready to let people go and send them off with love. And even if you weren't able to be there for them, you can be there with them in spirit. You can hug them. You can trust that they're there. You can feel them if you really pay attention, and you can make sure that you got everything you needed to say out. So I am a little bit tired because I'm filming this at 1 in the morning, and I have to be awake to go to work at 10 in the morning. So I'm gonna end this. I just want to make sure I said everything I wanted to say. I think I did. All right. I'll see you next week. I'm not sure what I'm going to be talking about, but I'll figure it out. I have a whole week to figure it out. Thank you for watching, and leave a comment if you have anything to say. I just wish people would talk about death more, because it's such an ignored topic, and it's so obviously important. Like, how can you pretend that something that's inevitably going to happen to everyone isn't worth talking about and really taking a serious long look at? Like, you just sort of read a Bible or read somebody's theory and then just kind of decided, yeah, I guess this is it. Don't need to put any more thought into it. I don't understand that mentality. But then again, I used to think like that when I was 15. Like, I was very focused on getting to a conclusion. But then I realized that you're never done learning. There's always more. So that's what this is. So hopefully we can learn together, and this can be a long journey of this podcast. Thank you for watching, and hopefully I'll see you next week.